My name is Sam Cranwell. I am head of design at Versantus. Versantus is a digital agency based in North Oxford. We produce what some other people have termed as clever websites. We build software systems, website systems, apps, voice user interfaces, and my responsibility for Versantus is to head up front-end design of all of those systems and user experience as well. So today I'm here to talk about user experience design and the trends in user experience design for 2020 and beyond. So some people may ask, what is user experience and what is a user experience and design trends forecast? Hopefully, I shall get this more correct than Michael Fish does with weather forecasts. But what I'm going to talk about is how, as technology evolves at an increasingly rapid rate, the software and services that come onto the market that are delivered by people like Netflix, Amazon, eBay, companies like that, with each new tool that they deliver and the immense amount of resource that they pour into those user interfaces, the psychology and behavior of their audience changes over time and becomes very used to these user interfaces, and they start to expect that from more future experiences. And then as all of these platforms become the norm, these patterns of user experience and design, they become trends. And I'm going to talk through some of those trends from the last 6-12 months, and then how those are adapting for the future and beyond, and the kinds of things that you can use in your own projects. I'm going to start with the generation game. So the picture in the background of the slides of Greta Thunberg, who is somebody of recent times who highlights a generational divide. Her stance is all on is about environment, but there's definitely a generational divide when it comes to digital content as well. In 2019, some people might remember it, there was a widespread meme called OK Boomer, and it was a sort of a retort for a perceived resistance to technological change. It sort of highlighted a disconnect between Generation Z millennials and baby boomers. But ironically, in 2019, internet usage by baby boomers and older has significantly increased across all platforms. Most online marketing activity and digital product positioning is aimed at Generation Z and millennials, but in comparison, baby boomers have loads more disposable income, much more free time, and older generations are becoming as internet proficient as their younger counterparts. And this is thanks to vastly improved user interfaces and user experiences. These stats offered by the Office of National Statistics from their labour force survey highlight about internet usage over the past 8 years or so. And the remarkable figure amongst this all is on the far right, is internet usage in people of 75 and over has increased over 100% in that time. And it highlights how the user interface and user experience and the hardware that we're using these days has opened up internet usage to everybody. The technology adoption that people are adapting to, you can see from these graphs that people who own smartphones of all generations is just going up and up and up. And there's been a stark rise in the last sort of 12 months or so, especially amongst older generations. Interestingly, though, the tablet usage in Generation X is going down. It's been going down over the last 12 months in favor of people using smartphones as their main device for accessing the internet. And this is all, again, thanks to good user interface and good user experience. So 5G's been getting a bit of a bad rap lately, and there's one thing that you can be sure is that our internet speeds, our mobile internet speeds, are not going to go down. They are only going to get faster, and whether that's through 5G or they call it something different in the future, our user experiences online are going to get better and better and better. And you may be familiar with the term Internet of Things. Well, we're going to start seeing the Internet of Everything as a new term that it's going to be used everywhere. The image in the background is an example of a user interface that if you've got a brand new Hyundai, you can get access to. And it's an augmented reality app that you can wave. If you're sat in the driver's seat of your car, you can wave around your interior and it will show you which each of the buttons and knobs do and show you how to use them. And this is only thanks to good internet speeds and fantastic technology that allows these kinds of things to happen. By 2022, the 12% of internet traffic, this is forecast, 12% of internet traffic will be on 5G superfast networks. Now that's 12% of all internet traffic, not just of mobile device internet traffic. And the knock-on effect of this is that things like augmented reality interfaces like the Hyundai app will become way more widespread. Content recommendation and personalization is going to become way more useful and way more precise. And artificial intelligence style applications are going to become more responsive. You're going to have faster connections, better hardware to run on, and you're going to be able to get all of that power into a small device in the palm of your hand. So things like intelligent maps, voice assistants, smart shooting, it's all going to continue to be upgraded and enhanced. Voice and vision technology, that's going to become a user experience staple. It's going to become part of our everyday life. The birds on the right-hand side of my slide are a project by an organization called Dukes, who develop AI interfaces, and their bird watcher, which is still very much in beta at the moment, it can identify up to 200 species of bird just from a single photograph. And the amount of processing power that takes to do that is incredible, but it can all be done from the palm of your hand. I mentioned previously personalization and recommendations. These experiences are becoming stronger and stronger everywhere we go. The images on the right-hand side show a scene from Google Maps, and you've probably seen, if you're searching for a restaurant, or not at the moment, but if you're searching for something like that on Google Maps, Google Maps will give you recommendations based on places that you previously visited. And Google holds that information about you from your use in Google Maps. But there are simple kinds of personalizations that we can do. We can change our pages based on a location someone's viewing it from, the time, the weather. We call these sort of all environmental personalization. But also then there's the real personal side of things. There's your age, your gender, your shopping habits, your most visited locations, your most viewed websites and platforms, reviews you've left, and things like that. Most of these things are all connected to either your Facebook account or your Google account. And you can leverage those kinds of systems. On the top right-hand corner of the screen is the login screen from a real estate company called Zillow. If you log into their website with your Google account, it will automatically run property searches for you to save you the trouble of having to do that. And it will do that based on all of the information held in your Google account. So this kind of personalization we're going to see loads more of in the future. And it's just going to get more and more powerful. And a big thing, everybody's familiar with Amazon Echoes and Apple HomePods and Google Home devices. These kinds of voice user interfaces are now making their ways into the palm of our hands as these voice assistants migrate onto mobile devices. And 5G speeds is going to make those more useful as well. Google Assistant can already make you an appointment. It will ring your hairdressers for you and speak to somebody on your behalf. And it can reply to your messages, write your email for you, find photos and share them. With the advances in continued conversation, so what I mean by continued conversation is no wake-up words, no having to say Alexa or something like that. On all of these voice user interface platforms, this natural user experience is going to reduce the operating costs, shorten the operating process chains, and become the daily assistant of users. We recently have been involved in a voice user interface project for a emergency vets company, and we programmed the system where you can ask Alexa or whatever device you're using, for example, if your dog's eaten a bar of chocolate, you can find out what the next emergency steps should be to take. So these systems are becoming more and more powerful and more useful. With larger screen smartphones and more powerful processors and chipsets, it's opening up the doors to more interesting augmented reality interfaces, particularly in retail. The coronavirus and the lockdown has seen an increase in lots of energy being put into these kinds of projects, as the virtual shopping experience is key to the success of many retail companies these days. And the user interface design for these kinds of things needs to adapt to smaller screen devices and leverage the capabilities of them, the accelerometers inside the phones, the light sensors inside the phones and so forth. And all of these things can be harnessed to deliver a more comfortable user experience. And the focus is now becoming more about unique ways of delivering content that respond to simple and intuitive actions and don't clutter the limited display space of a small device. So that brings me on to what we call perceptual aesthetic improvement, or AKA making stuff look good. So it's a fancy way of saying the user interface now, or users now expect a little bit more than a couple of boxes with some text and a couple of images. So the first thing I've got on my list here is natural operation response. So now, as our mobile devices are as powerful and as capable as computers, they can deliver motion-based user experiences that mimic nature and respect the laws of physical motion. So thanks to sort of advancing technology from software such as Body Moving and Lottie, which were open source projects that were actually developed by Airbnb, it's more commonplace for a user interface to respond to touch using delicate animation techniques that leverage 3D space, light perception and particle performance. They obey the digital laws of physics, and these kind of subtle animation techniques enrich user interface design. And the next one I've got here is dark mode. So there's one, so I keep seeing this phrase everywhere at the moment. So dark mode is so hot right now. And that's because we're seeing it in more and more places. Facebook have just launched their own dark mode. eBay have just launched dark mode on their apps as well. And it was originally developed as a way to reduce eye strain in low light conditions and help with battery life on mobile devices. But it's now commonplace in many leading applications. And the knock-on effect of this is that this aesthetic is now influencing the design of user interfaces for websites and apps, and more dark color schemes are making their way into mainstream design. So we're going to see a lot more of it. Also, as well, is something that I'm enjoying seeing a lot more of online is this embracing of stylized imperfection and using illustration as a way of communicating your brand and your product. So it's a sort of move away from the clean lines and the minimalism of the sort of past decade and the material design, and it's just becoming way more prevalent online. So users are tiring of this sort of sparse kind of style and this linear geometric iconography, and being attracted to illustration that can deliver content with character and emotion and stylization. And in combination with animation as well, it really comes up with some special kinds of things. And this is being grabbed by brands like Gucci, Aesop, Headspace, Casper, Mattresses, Slack, Etsy. You'll see it all over the place. And another thing that that's not new but is now evolving is immersive 3D. So 3D graphics online have been around for a very long time. But the quality of these graphics is improving every day thanks to the hardware that produces them, but more so the hardware that gives you the ability to view them and interact with them. So it means that we're starting to see sort of tactile user experiences where users can interact with objects and get a better understanding of the product. And if 3D models are available, then it's possible to use animation to bring those to life and then respond to other user interactions. So we're going to see some much more exciting immersive 3D in user interfaces moving forwards. And this one's a favorite of mine because it's it harks back to when Apple first released their iPhone. They broke boundaries with their user interface design, and something that was termed as skeuomorphism, which was this design with very shiny beveled edges and 3D styling that made your app icons look real and touchable. And people started to tire of that very quickly. And then a very flat and what Google termed as material design then started to take over the last few years. And with all of these things, styles and tastes change, and skeuomorphism is now being picked up again and combined with that flat style of design. And it's now being termed as neomorphism. And neomorphic design is now becoming much more prevalent everywhere on the internet, especially in more complex user interfaces such as apps and things like that. And it's basically a combination of really soft shadows, floating effects, and it's not trying to make things look real, but more to make them look tactile and make them look usable. And neomorphism is all about making the user experience more effective through good design. And something else that we're beginning to see loads more and implementing quite a bit in our own designs is solid frames and white space. So I think the days of a full bleed hero image that takes up the first third of your website is starting to move away. And we're now putting more effort into design and typography and framing to give our websites a much more sort of editorial and magazine style feel. With the way our devices have to respond to different screen sizes, we can now adapt this style of design more easily to different styles of in different sizes of device. And it helps images pop. It brings a touch of that editorial design to the screen. It prioritizes content and it guides users through the flow of content. And rather than just one horizontal band of content after another, we can use this kind of framing and use of white space to enrich the user experience. And that brings me on to navigation. So every website or app or interface has some kind of navigation to allow the user to work their way through it. And the burger menu has been around for a fair few years now and is becoming more commonplace on desktop websites as well as mobile interfaces. But this trimmed down navigation style, although it does suit smaller displays, even on larger displays, it simplifies the user experience. It immerses users in content and lets them work their way through the site and lets you guide them through the site rather than having them making idle clicks and wondering where to go. And these kind of interfaces are more prevalent on big brand sites through desktop as well as the apps. And fresh off the press last week from Google was the announcement of their new Core Web Vitals algorithm, which will be coming into, well, they're already monitoring websites on this algorithm now, but it will start to affect website rankings in 2021. So you can find out lots more about the algorithm at web.dev/vitals. That's Google's official documentation on it. But it will affect the way that we all build and develop websites. Loading speed has always been important, but Google have now sort of chopped that into 3 areas. So we have LCP, which is the largest contentful paint. So it's the time that the largest object on your website takes to load. So it just makes people mindful of putting in really large assets onto their web pages. There's also the first input delay, which is about the time from the time it takes before you can actually make an input onto the page. And also then there's the cumulative layout shift, which is the amount your website changes in shape and where objects are located on the page as each of the elements loads up. So how many times have you gone to click on a form and then something else loads in and then you've accidentally clicked on a button? It can have disastrous results for some user experiences. So Google will be monitoring that and giving us all the tools to help us monitor that. There are already things like Chrome extensions and stuff like that that help with that. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you ever so much for everyone who listened and has given me the time. Please go ahead and implement the trends and check us out at versantus.co.uk. Any questions, please ask myself or David. We're going to post a link to this presentation in the comments, so feel free to go back and have a look at it all. Thank you very much.